spout a lot of conspiracy think, whether it's deep state, whether it's 9/11, whether it's vaccines.
Tell me a theory that you think I got wrong. To show me facts.
Yes, that's right. Chris Cuomo is worried about conspiracies. RFK Jr. was making liberals' hair catch on fire, most specifically journalists, and their narratives were just falling apart around them because RFK dared to say, no, you keep saying Trump is a threat to democracy. Frankly, Biden is a bigger threat to democracy. Or to be clear, he said, I could make the case that Joe Biden is a bigger threat to democracy, which he is, by the way. There's no doubt about it. What he said was 100% true. When the president of the United States utilizes his power and the powers of the DOJ, CIA, FBI, DHS, and any other alphabet soup agency that you want to put in there that has the power to ruin your life, when he uses those agencies to censor and silence his opposition by putting pressure on social media companies to cut you off, and which is exactly 100% what they did. Well, when he can do that, that is the biggest threat to democracy than anything that happened on January 6th. Period. End of story. I will die on that hill. I'm sorry. And you should too. Well, RFK said that and everybody went nuts yesterday. So last night, he appeared on Chris Cuomo's show over at News Nation. When last we checked in with Chris Cuomo, he was on with Tucker Carlson. Seems like he's interested in pertinent conversations that actually mean something. And it looks like he's not quite the propagandist he appeared to be over at CNN. I say it appeared that way, but let's take a look at how he handled RFK Jr. last night, and you tell me.
The headlines read, Bobby Kennedy thinks Biden bigger threat than Trump. Is that fair? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here is to make the case for himself. I told you to be careful what you wish for. Here's one thing we know for sure. The Biden administration is not giving you security today, not after that interview. Do you want...
Let me pause there for a second. That's an incredibly telling... I know he's trying to be fun and, hey, we're buddies. Let's try. The Biden, one of the issues here is that Bobby Kennedy Jr. is not getting Secret Service protection from threat of assassination. And many people believe it's because Joe Biden does not want to legitimize his candidacy because it is an existential threat to his performance this November. And hear what Chris Cuomo said there, chuckling, laughing. Well, he's not going to give you Secret Service now after you said that. Well, isn't Cuomo actually conceding the actual problem here? Isn't Chris Cuomo actually confirming in his own mind with his own bias there that Joe Biden is politicizing the use of Secret Service? Secret Service is meant to protect a person, a high-profile political figure, from assassination. And Chris Cuomo confirming the fact that he's not going to give Secret Service protection because he doesn't like what Bobby Kennedy said actually reinforces the reality that Joe Biden is using Secret Service as a political weapon and is perfectly fine with this man being assassinated because he doesn't like him politically. And Chris Cuomo is, frankly, so stupid he doesn't realize that he just confirmed it. I'll go back now and we'll watch the whole clip again. But boy, that is a major tell right there.
You wish for. Here's one thing we know for sure. The Biden administration is not giving you security today, not after that interview. Do you want people to believe that you think that President Biden has done more objectionable things vis-a-vis our democracy than former President Trump did in the aftermath of the last election?
No, as you heard, Chris, what I said was that I can make this argument, and I didn't say definitively whether I believed one or the other was more dangerous than democracy. I did say that I don't believe either of them are going to destroy democracy. Both sides are telling us the other guy is the end of the republic, but they're both lame duck presidents. They're going to be in there 4 years. Like their political opponents are going to be announced 2 years later. There'll be a new Congress in 2 years later, and we have strong institutions in our country. We have judiciary, we have the press to some extent. We've got Congress, and you have the military. You've got a lot of institutions that are bulwarks against a tyrant coming in and taking over democracy. So I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. All right. So he's sort of walking it back there, although again, this is what he has to do. He's an independent candidate, so he has to appeal to both sides of the political equation. But the reality is such, and we all know it. And in fact, again, Chris Cuomo just confirmed it, that Joe Biden is the real authoritarian here, and he's the much larger threat to our system of government here. Chris Cuomo then went on to lecture Bobby Kennedy Jr. about conspiracies. Yes, that's right. Chris Cuomo is worried about conspiracies.
A lot of the write-ups are playing to your biggest weakness, which is that you spout a lot of conspiracy think, whether it's deep state, whether it's 9/11, whether it's vaccines. You are painted with that brush. And I know you in the campaign think that this is water under the bridge. We've already addressed it. But I think that you should greatly rethink going there, because all those write-ups today called you a conspiracist. And I think that there are a lot of people in this country that want another choice, but they're not going to vote for a conspiracist.
I was called a conspiracy theorist because I said that glyphosate, which is the active ingredient of Roundup, caused non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. People said that's a conspiracy theory. As it turned out, we won 3 jury trials in which they agreed with us, and Monsanto settled for $13 billion. I said at the beginning of the pandemic that vaccines were not going to prevent transmission. I said that because I was reading the science. I was reading the monkey studies that showed that they didn't prevent transmission in monkeys. So I knew they weren't going to do it in humans. I was called a conspiracy theorist, and now everybody admits that. I said that COVID lockdowns were going to be very, very harmful to children, particularly. They would damage our economy, and they would not prevent the spread of a respiratory virus. And the reason I said that, I was reading the science. I was reading pandemic protocols over the past 40 years. I was called a conspiracy theorist. I said the masks were not going to work to prevent the spread of the disease, and that they would probably do more harm than good. And now everybody agrees with that. I said the same thing about social distancing, that it wasn't science-based. And Tony Fauci has now acknowledged that's true. Tell me a theory that you think I got wrong. To show me facts. I'm not somebody, I don't say things unless I have a factual basis. But what the defense of the political establishment is that anybody who questions reigning political orthodoxies is discredited and marginalized and demonized by characterizing them as a conspiracy theorist. But I don't know any place where I have advocated a theory that is not factual based. Tell me what it is. I'm happy to answer it.
I don't know what happened on 9/11, but I do understand the government's reckoning of it, and I don't have any reason to not believe it. Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying that you don't know whether you believe what the government says happened on 9/11? This matters.
Well, I don't, listen, I've been around long enough that I question everything that the government tells me. And I think people who don't question what the government tells them are not paying attention.
Yeah, and I'd love to show you more of the gotcha moments where Chris Cuomo says, well, here, I've got this list of things that you've said that are all conspiracies, and you've lied about them and you've been wrong about them, but I can't show that to you. In fact, you saw there he had to go back to 9/11 and all Bobby Kennedy has said up until then. And listen, I'm not a fan of Robert Kennedy. I don't want him anywhere near the White House. He's a radical liberal. But I also care about the truth. And all Robert Kennedy has said is, I don't think we should trust everything that the government has told us about 9/11. And I think that's probably universally held by most people. That doesn't mean it was an inside job. It doesn't mean that we were in on it. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means we probably shouldn't believe everything that they told us about that. I mean, for God's sake, the man is Robert Kennedy. He should have asked, hey, Chris, let's start with you. Do you think that they told us everything about my uncle's assassination? What do you think, Chris? I mean, after everything that we've learned and everything we've been through, isn't it the more natural, reasonable position to be skeptical of what our government tells us? Also, one other thing that's really telling about the beginning of this interview, when Chris Cuomo, in fact, let's play it again because I just want to highlight it. Watch.
Out of the write-ups are playing to your biggest weakness, which is that you spout a lot of conspiracy think, whether it's deep state, whether it's 9/11, whether it's vaccines. You are painted with that brush. And I know you and the campaign think that this is water under the bridge. We've already addressed it. But I think that you should greatly rethink going there, because all those write-ups today called you a conspiracist.
So Chris Cuomo frames this entire discussion with his guest, a presidential candidate, with all the write-ups today called you a conspiracy theorist. And I think you should worry about that. What are you going to do about it? Instead of actually going back one step and saying, all the write-ups today called you a conspiracy theorist, but are all the write-ups accurate? Are all the write-ups true? Are all the write-ups about you factual when they call you that? Because it's the conventional wisdom premise that anyone who's writing about politics in America, and the vast majority of them are writing it from a position of left of center, which means we must protect Joe Biden and we must make sure that he wins re-election, which means we must do whatever we can to harm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. They all have accepted this as a given, as a fact. Well, everybody knows that he's a conspiracy theorist, and no one has actually stopped and said, well, wait a minute, is that even a correct premise? Including Chris Cuomo. His concern is that Robert Kennedy Jr. is being painted this way instead of being concerned, number one, why all of the write-ups are making this assertion without actually backing it up. They don't even have to back it up anymore. It's just everybody knows it. And even more importantly, number two, Mr. Cuomo, does it occur to you that it's strange that all of the write-ups today, as you put it, you just said all of the write-ups, is it weird to you that all of the write-ups all said the same thing? Why does that happen? Why does that keep happening? Why do all of these journalists and all of these reporters and all of these writers who cover politics all wake up the next morning and all end up writing the exact same article? Is that weird to you? And the answer of the question, of course, is no, it's not weird to him because he's one of them. Chris Cuomo lecturing Bobby Kennedy about conspiracies? How's Chris Cuomo doing with conspiracies?
Cuomo.
All right, Brooke, thank you very much. We are living a very big moment right now. How will lawmakers respond to the president's clear intent to influence this Russia investigation, even after the appointment of a special counsel? We have lawmakers from both sides ahead who are players, and it is time to play. Next.
Oh, yeah. He's got lawmakers from both sides. All right. We've got Democrats who hate Donald Trump, and we also have Republicans who hate Donald Trump even more. That's how he conducted himself the entire time during the Trump presidency, and specifically focused on Russian collusion. And you saw that was him as the morning show host on New Day there at CNN. He was so good at pushing the Russian conspiracy hoax on CNN that they promoted him and they gave him a prime time show. Oh, but Larry, Bobby Kennedy, this has less to do with Russian collusion. The conspiracies that Bobby Kennedy has to do with the vaccine and masks and COVID policies. And, that's science. And, well, what about Chris Cuomo's position on those issues back when it was the story of the day?
Okay. You have vaccine resistant, skeptical, hesitant, and then you have just, I'm not taking it. A restaurant owner in California posted signs calling on customers to show proof that they have not gotten the vaccine. He's also banned diners from wearing masks inside and put up this massive billboard that says, leave the mask, take the cannoli. Of course, it has to be an Italian guy, and he's using the Godfather. Anyway, Tony Roman is the owner of Basilico's Pasta e Vino, and he joins me now from inside his restaurant. Welcome.
Man, you said the name perfectly. You said it perfectly. Good job. Now I know you're Italian.
It's because I speak the language. Let me guess. You don't. But here's what I'm asking you. Tony.
I love it.
Is this a little bit of a joke?
Fire
Can you give me some hope that you really don't want people to not get vaccinated so they can come to your restaurant?
It's a good question. You're a smart guy. It's an IQ test. And like I say to people when they ask me, if they're so blinded with their rage and their hate, I tell them, you know what? If you still don't understand it, maybe we should put up a sign up that says you're too stupid to come into the restaurant. I mean, it's very simple. just like you said, I think you figured it out. Am I right?
I don't even know what you're saying right now. Tell me. So what's the deal?
Point. I'm saying we're making a point.
And so
you answered the question.
So you haven't been vaccinated. Nobody in your family's been vaccinated.
If I answer that, are you going to answer that when I ask you?
Yeah, sure. Ask me whatever you want. Now answer my question.
I'm not vaccinated. Are you?
I am. How about your parents, your wife, your kids?
You were hesitant.
No, I got vaccinated.
I'm gonna ask you the same. I'm gonna ask you the same thing. Is that all right?
Yeah, go ahead.
No. Is your family vaccinated?
Yes.
See, what you're not getting, you're failing the IQ test. What you're not getting, which I expected. What you're not getting is that this is not an anti-vaccine stand. It's a pro-freedom stand. That's what you're not getting.
What is the difference when you are ignoring the science that suggests that if you get vaccinated, you protect yourself, you protect the people around you, and you help us get out of this pandemic a little bit faster?
All right. So you get the picture. It's a fantastic. And I love that guy. And of course, you can see Chris Cuomo acting like the smug, arrogant jerk that he is. And he thinks he's got the upper hand in this argument. He thinks that he's showing that restaurant owner to be a stupid, uneducated conspiracy theorist clown. But see, now we have the benefit of 3 years of hindsight, don't we? Who was right in that interview? More importantly, who was the conspiracy theorist clown who didn't follow science, who didn't understand what was going on? And that's fine. You can be dumb. You can make a mistake. But then when he comports himself this way and acts like, that he's the one who's the brilliant sage up on a mountaintop who has all the wisdom, and it's his job as a mouthpiece for CNN and the state to publicly ridicule and humiliate someone who disagrees, well, that's when you take it a step too far. See, Chris Cuomo in that picture is the conspiracy theorist. And has Chris Cuomo apologized? Has he repented? Has he actually explained, oh, I got that one wrong? Oh, no. Now Chris Cuomo still sits in a chair behind a desk in front of a camera, and now he dares to challenge a presidential candidate and call that guy the conspiracy theorist. You see, being a liberal Democrat propagandist apparatchik with a journalism degree who reads a teleprompter and does the work of the government, well, it means never having to say you're sorry. You can get it wrong every single time. And not only do you keep your job, although he did lose his job at CNN for various other reasons, but you get to keep your profession, and you still get to sit in that high and mighty position on top of that throne and cast judgment and call names and demean everybody else who continues to dare to push back on the narrative pushed down our throats by the likes of Chris Cuomo and the government apparatchiks he works for. It's really quite a little gig they've got going there, isn't it?